Today, as Christians, we pay tithe, we make offerings, but many times we pay tithes and offerings with wrong intentions. We think that we are in a casino and that we are investing and God will make us millionaires. And when we don't get the millions, we get disappointed. And we who are here as professionals today, it is a day to interrogate ourselves, to ask ourselves questions wherever we are, whether we can pass the litmus test. Suppose there was to be a rapture today, that Christ were to come today, on the basis of the criteria that is provided in the Bible, would you get to heaven? Ask yourself that question. It is not the number of services that you attend every year. It is not the tithes and offerings that you pay. Would you get to heaven by your very actions? And this is what makes me make reference to the story of the Good Samaritan, recorded in the book of Luke, as I said a little earlier, chapter 10, verses 29 through to 37. And Christ was answering what was essentially a very simple question. Who is your neighbor? That was the question that was posed. And who is your neighbor? It would have been possible for him to say that your neighbor is he or she who lives next to you. But he did not answer in that way. He said, there was a man who was traveling that road, that dangerous road, and he was ambushed by robbers. And when he lay there dying, a Levite passed. Levites, we are Latter-day Levites. They did nothing. Another believer passed, did nothing. And then there came a Samaritan. And in order to understand the context of this story, you must understand the status of the Samaritans during the times when Christ walked on the surface of this earth. And this Good Samaritan, we now call him the Good Samaritan, said, he took care of him and went to the inn and said, take care of him. And if there is any additional expense, you tell me. Today, courtesy of his actions, we say he was a good Samaritan. How many of you professionals here have found yourselves in situations where you could have been a good Samaritan, but you are not? How many of you here who are lawyers in government institutions, who when called upon to do that which is good and right, you seek to be bribed first? How many of you here, I'm not asking you to raise your hands, but I'm asking you to inspect your heart. How many of you here who are doctors, upon whom it fell to save life, and asked many questions, irrelevant questions, and lives were lost? How many of you here are engineers who compromise the standards and qualities of our roads that you may become rich? How many of you? How many of you who are reporters here who will distort what we are saying today? How many of you? Because when you find yourself in any situation where your acts or omissions can harm another, that other is your neighbor. This is the message. So, as to who is your neighbor changes from time to time, but your conduct must never change. In other words, as professionals, we must make painful choices. You know, many times I listen to fellow Christians and they say, I love the Lord, and I do not begrudge them. I'm not in the business of begrudging them, because they have their duty and right to love the Lord. But a few minutes later, when they are driving on the road, they do not love the other motorists. And I said, how can they possibly be conducting themselves in a manner that could lead to the death of the other motorists, and then they say they love the Lord? In John 1, you are told that you are a liar if you are such a one as that. And you know, in this country, when we say there is corruption or evil, all these other things, who are the midwives of corruption in this country? Professionals. We are the midwives. Look at any institution that is collapsing or has collapsed. Who has presided over the collapse of such institutions? Is it not us who are professionals? Do we make the right choices when we are called upon to make the right choices? Whom do we worship? Do we worship Mammon or God? Do we obey the law when it is inconvenient to us? When I read the story of the Israelites as they moved from Egypt through the desert for 40 years to the promised land, and it has been dramatized in modern times. I do not know whether you watch movies. If you do, good. If you don't, I urge you to. And there is one movie which is a dramatization of that event that I want you to watch. And I'm citing this movie so that I may make reference to the verse that I talked about in the book of the prophet Joshua. It is a movie that was produced in 1956. It's called The Ten Commandments. How many have watched it? If you've watched the Ten Commandments, you can understand how weak we are as human beings. For 400 years, the Israelites were praying to God generation after generation to free them from slavery. But once they are freed from slavery, their conduct is completely that of ungrateful individuals. And if you read and watch that movie alongside the Bible, you will know that there are certain things that are extra biblical, but other things that are biblical. But the ones that are biblical are the ones that I want to make reference to. When Moses goes up into the mountain and he leaves Aaron, his brother, and Miriam, the sister, After only a few days, the Israelites say they want a God that they can see. And they make unto themselves an image of a calf. The sons of Korah are there. Dathan is there. And they have persuaded the people to rebel against God. And when he comes down now in the dramatization, he comes down with the tablets of the law, and the people have rebelled. And one of them, I think it is Korah, who says, you have made unto yourselves laws that you may become a prince over us. We are free. But Moses says, no, there is no freedom outside of the law. Freedom must be within the law. And that is why, therefore, as professionals, we must be bound by certain ethics. We must have certain taboos, the things that we do not do, and the things that we do. And these taboos are the ones that will prevent us from doing things that are not in the best interest of our country and our society. In other words, as professionals, we are enjoined to make choices. But which choices do we make? Today, as Christians, we pay tithe, we make offerings, but many times we pay tithes and offerings with wrong intentions. We think that we are in a casino and that we are investing and God will make us millionaires. And when we don't get the millions, we get disappointed. Choose you now whom you shall serve, is what I'm coming to. But what I want to say before that is, we must change our minds and change our hearts. This morning, I was telling the good president here, and we were reminding ourselves that it's not lost on us that the Bible says that out of the whole group that left Egypt, only 2 entered the promised land. Only 2. Joshua and Caleb. The rest died because they had left Egypt, but there was too much Egypt in them. You can leave Egypt, but Egypt is telling you. So today, we who are professionals here, we must ask ourselves the uncomfortable question. Is Egypt still in us, or we have left Egypt and exorcised the ghost of Egypt? And that is how I understand the famous statement that is recorded in the book of Joshua at chapter 24, verse 15. Because the people were undecided. The people were undecided whether they should worship God or they should worship little gods. And he says, you must now make a choice. You must not be of 2 minds. Choose you now whom you shall serve. You know, when I look at us as Christians, I look at us as professionals, I look at us as a country, I look at the judgments that we make as a country. I ask myself, if it is said of us that in determining who is a Christian, there is no Jew nor Gentile, no slave nor free. Do you remember that? There is no Jew nor Gentile, no slave nor free. But here in a country where we have professionals, one of the greatest diseases is, we call it ethnicity or tribalism. We are one of the most ethnic countries on earth. The blood of ethnicity is thicker than the blood of Christ. So that when you are making your judgments, you don't make judgment on the basis of whether you are Christian, but you make judgment on the basis of whether you are Luo, Kamba, Luhya, or Kalenjin. But when you get to the Kalenjin, it becomes Nandi, Kipsigis. Because when you begin to look for the things that divide you, you will find them. I was asking somebody the other day, when we are putting people into positions as Christians, because we claim we are Christian. When you are boarding an aircraft and you are Luo, do you ever ask, is the pilot Luo? You don't. What you want is a good pilot that will make the thing fly and land. But when we want to appoint a minister, we say, is the minister Kamba? What contradiction do we have as a nation? When you want to catch a rat, what you need is a cat. Whether the cat is black or white is irrelevant. You want a rat-catching cat. But do we as professionals, have we liberated ourselves from that? Professionals. Today, if you look at universities across our country, if you go to Maseno, I dare challenge you, the vice chancellor is likely Luo. And if he is not, the Luos in that area will say, we want our own. Does chemistry change when it's taught by a Kamba and when it's taught by Luo? If you go to Moi University, likely the vice chancellor is of the Kalenjin extraction. If you go to Seuko in Machakos, the vice chancellor is likely a Kamba. If you go to Masinda Muliro, the vice chancellor is likely a Luhya of the Bukusu extraction. If you go to Rongo, the vice chancellor is likely to be a Luo. If you go to Dedan Kimathi University, that one may be a little different. But if you go to any of these, and the people will say, we want our own. And these people who say these are Christians, for whom there is no Jew nor. How do we reconcile that kind of conduct? When you want to have the head of the Moi teaching and referral, you want a Kalenjin, but when you are dying, you want an oncologist. How do you reconcile that? We must make a choice. But we are not making those choices as Christians who are Kenyans, because we want to be nice to each other. Until the day that we are capable of liberating ourselves from these basic instincts, our countries will never realize their potential. And I'm urging you that we as a Christian body, we must now ask ourselves uncomfortable questions in order to give meaning to our Christianity. You know, I now know churches, and there is a very good friend of mine who is an archbishop of the Catholic Church. For the moment, the Catholic Church is doing a very good job. They appoint them differently. But I know a church which I will not name, because you may recognize it. And I want to be politically correct, in which you cannot be a bishop unless you are an aborigine of that area. We have now put Christ and God into ethnic pigeonholes. And it is we professionals who preside over that. If you go to different parts of Kenya, you are in West Pokot, you are in Elgeyo Marakwet, you are in different parts in Kisii, the people who are not professionals never talk about these things. It is we professionals who remind them about their ethnicity, which ought to be celebrated. Ethnic diversity is something to be celebrated. It is the use of ethnicity as an instrument of judgment and discrimination that must be condemned. There is nothing wrong with our ethnicity. God, in his divine wisdom, made us different because he is a God of diversity, because diversity is what creates harmony. But if we choose to use our diversity to destroy the harmony that we have, then we can never realize our potential. You professionals who are here, I want you to reflect. There was a time in this country, and many of you will remember, when you left the comfort of your home in Kirinyaga and you are a student in Shimolatewa in Mombasa. There was a time in this country when you left the comfort of your home in Karatina and you are a student in Maseno. There was a time in this country when you left the comfort of your home in Machakos and you are a student at Cardinal Otunga High School in Kisii. Today, we have created a situation where you start primary school. I believe there is a primary school of Moi University. Then you go to that primary school. Then you go to a secondary school in the neighborhood. Then you go to the university in that neighborhood. Then you are employed in Uasin Gishu. In your world, the world is only about Uasin Gishu. You are not exposed. Even when you claim to be a Christian professional, you are not exposed. We were told here about the journey of Christianity, the journey of Paul, the journey of movement from the promised land into Malta, into different parts of the world. That is why we have Christianity here, because people thought widely. But the current professional is a professional whose worldview is very narrow, and he or she claims that they are Christians. Do you sometimes wonder why, therefore, we pray and fast and the things that we ought to get, we don't get? Because praying and fasting without belief is superstition. Ni ushirikina tu. That is how I then want to make reference to the book of Matthews. Matthews chapter 25 verses 14 through to 30. You remember the story of that great man, if he was great in his days. The Bible records that there was this great man, a rich man, who was going away for some time. And then what he did was to give to his workers according to their ability. One he gave 5 talents, another one he gave 2 talents, and another one he gave 1 talent. Do you remember that story? And do you remember that when he had gone out for a long time, he came back, and to the one that he had given 5 talents, he asked, Master, he told him, Master, you gave me 5 talents, I've worked the 5, and here are my 5. Therefore there were 10. And to the one that he gave 2, he said, Master, I've worked the 2, and they are now 4. And he said, good worker. And to the one that he gave 1, he said, I know you. You are in the business of reaping where you have not sown, not his words, but my words, but making the point. And then the Bible records and says, and to those who do not have, Even the little they have shall be taken away from them, and it shall be given to those who have. As professionals, how do we use our professionalism to multiply what we have for the general good? Today in Kenya, and I'll say this, we have something called devolution, and we love it. How many of you here love devolution? None of you love devolution. It is a good thing. A few good things have happened, but a few bad things have happened. Professionals of different kinds are serving in our devolved units. Lawyers, doctors, economists, and these professionals attend church on Saturdays and on Sundays. But I've never seen any pastor, not even in your church, not any one of them, rebuke the thieves who have been devolved. Not one. You accept their tithe and offering gleefully, and you say all wealth belongs to God, even the stolen ones. Yet Christ rebuked taxpayers. So even the clergy have fallen short of the glory of the expectation of both God and man, because we do not rebuke. There are thieves here, many of them. We do not rebuke. There are thieves here, many of them, who have been devolved. Some of them are still at the center. And the thieves that are devolved, who are Christians, there are two things that they love doing. They build hotels. I do not know why hotels are very popular with thieves. Or office blocks. And then they invite pastors to bless them. And pastors say, this block was blessed by Pastor so and so of this church. Have you seen such buildings? Even here in Eldoret, they are there. I've seen them across the country, and I'm saying this because if we don't rebuke, then the professionals cannot change. Have you seen? Even in churches, when thieving professionals arrive in church, when a sermon is going on, the pastor will stop. In the middle of a sermon, I've seen this. They go and bring the thief and bring him in front. Then the professionals cannot change because they are not rebuked. So all of us who are here, who are professionals, let us remember that when all is said and done, it is you and your God. You know, when 2 days ago I read the report by the EACC telling us how corruption has become pervasive. In order to get a job in Kenya, the average amount of money you spend is 163,000 Kenya shillings. Only one clergy, to my knowledge, has spoken about it and against it, Archbishop Muheria. None of the clergy. This must be done. Thank you. He will not succeed. You know, I say this with pain because it is we who are professionals who can change this. But are we willing to change? Are we willing in our own small ways to change? Because you cannot possibly change everybody, but you can change yourself. Kwa Kiswahili wanasema jishinde ushinde. Jishinde ushinde. Are we ready? You lawyers who are here, who are professionals, you judicial officers who are here, who are professionals, are we ready to ensure that justice according to law is done on the basis of evidence rather than on the basis of the size of our pockets? Are we prepared? You doctors who are here, who are in a public hospital and prescribe medicine which is bought at your pharmacy across the road, are you prepared to change? Because we know. You police officers who are running matatus and border borders, whom you allow to break the law, are you prepared to change? That we may reduce the accidents on our roads, are we prepared? You teachers who leak examination to your students and then celebrate with twigs at the end of the year when they pass, are you prepared to change? Are we? You town planners who are approving buildings which collapse and kill, that you may become a millionaire, are you prepared to change? You journalists who kill good stories because a brown envelope has been given to you, are you prepared to change? These are the painful questions that this country must ask. You politicians who are also professionals in your own right and run CDF, and you've incorporated 10 companies in which your drivers are the directors, trading with yourself, are you prepared to change? You MCAs who are now political professionals, who are crying for the ward fund because you have companies which you have incorporated, are you prepared to change? Are you prepared to be Christians? As a friend of mine, you remember the conversation I started with, we concluded by saying that kuna Wakristo wa aina mbili. Wakristo uchwara na Wakristo halisi. Sasa jiulize wewe hii leo, wewe ni Mkristo uchwara au ni Kristo halisi? Kwa kuwa kuna Ukristo uchwara tu, unakariri Biblia toka mwanzo hadi mwisho. Hata Ibilisi si anakariri Biblia, anakariri vizuri tu. Kwa hivyo kukariri Biblia si Ukristo. Ukristo ni vitendo.